Throughout history, the story of Christianity has been one of complex relationships, evolving doctrines, and at times, deep-seated tensions between different branches of the faith. One of the most intriguing and lesser-known chapters of this narrative centers on the relationship between the Roman Catholic Church, represented by the Vatican, and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, particularly as embodied in the ancient Saint Stephen of the Abyssinians Church. This church, nestled quietly within the boundaries of Vatican City, stands as a living testament to a tradition that both predates and challenges the authority of Rome in profound and fascinating ways. To understand why the Vatican harbors a certain apprehension toward Ethiopia's first church, it is essential to journey back through the mists of time to the early centuries of Christianity. The Ethiopian Church, with its roots stretching back to the earliest days of the faith, has preserved a distinctive spiritual heritage that includes sacred texts and traditions largely unknown or even deliberately excluded from the Western Christian canon. These texts, many of which were later deemed heretical or apocryphal by the Roman Catholic Church, offered alternative visions of Christian doctrine and spirituality. Their continued veneration in Ethiopia presented a direct challenge to Rome's claim to universal authority over Christian belief and practice. Nestled within the Vatican itself, Saint Stephen of the Abyssinians, known as Debre Salam in the Ethiopian tradition, stands as one of the oldest surviving churches in Vatican City. Dedicated to Stephen the Proto-Martyr and serving as the national church of Ethiopia, it is a spiritual home for Ethiopian Christians visiting Rome. Its liturgy is celebrated according to the Alexandrian rite of the Ethiopian Catholic Church, echoing ancient chants, prayers, and rituals that are markedly distinct from the Roman rite. But the true significance of this church extends far beyond its architectural age or liturgical differences. The heart of the Vatican's unease lies in the Ethiopian Church's steadfast preservation of a biblical canon that diverges sharply from the Roman Catholic one. Unlike the streamlined canon established by Western councils such as Nicaea in 325 AD, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church embraces a much broader collection of holy writings. Among these are the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and other texts that delve deeply into spiritual mysteries, angelology, and cosmology. These books, revered in Ethiopia as scripture, were excluded from the Western canon and, in some cases, actively suppressed as heretical. The Book of Enoch, for instance, is a work of immense antiquity and spiritual depth attributed to the biblical patriarch Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah. This text explores the realms of angels and fallen spirits, apocalyptic visions, and the hidden workings of the divine. Its content, with its vivid descriptions of angelic hierarchies and cosmic battles, offered interpretations of the spiritual world that differed significantly from the doctrines codified by the Roman Catholic Church. Likewise, the Book of Jubilees recasts much of the narrative of Genesis, providing a unique calendar and chronology that challenge established interpretations. For the Vatican, the presence and veneration of such texts within the heart of Christendom posed a significant problem. The councils that shaped the Catholic canon sought to unify Christian doctrine and suppress what they deemed dangerous or divergent teachings. The Council of Nicaea, and later the Council of Trent in the 16th century, worked to establish a definitive set of scriptures and to root out what the Church considered heresies. The Index Librorum Prohibitorum, a catalogue of forbidden books created during the Council of Trent, reflected the Vatican's determination to protect its followers from works thought to threaten doctrinal purity. Many of the books cherished in Ethiopia found their way onto this list, branded as subversive or spiritually perilous. Yet in Ethiopia, these texts were not only preserved, they were celebrated, safeguarded in monasteries high in the mountains or deep in the valleys, copied and illuminated by generations of monks, These writings form the backbone of Ethiopian Christian spirituality. They were read, studied, and preached from, shaping the worldview of millions of believers. Far from being seen as dangerous, they were regarded as treasures of wisdom and revelation, integral to understanding the fullness of God's message. This divergence was not merely a matter of differing literary tastes or theological preferences. It struck at the heart of the Vatican's claims to universality and authority. For centuries, the Roman Catholic Church asserted its role as the sole arbiter of Christian truth, the guardian of the one true canon of Scripture. The existence of a venerable Christian tradition that not only survived but thrived outside Rome's jurisdiction, and that held to a broader, older, and arguably more mystical canon, posed a direct challenge to that claim. The Ethiopian Church's independence was further underscored by its unique history. Christianity reached Ethiopia at a remarkably early date, with tradition holding that the royal court was converted in the 4th century by Saint Frumentius, known in Ethiopia as Abba Salama. This early embrace of Christianity meant that the Ethiopian Church developed in relative isolation, free from the influence of later Western theological developments. It forged its own path, blending biblical faith with ancient African traditions, and maintained a fierce commitment to its autonomy. Throughout the medieval period, the Ethiopian Church's relationship with Rome was marked by both curiosity and caution. Pilgrims and envoys traveled between Ethiopia and Europe, exchanging gifts and letters, but always with a sense of mutual wariness. The Vatican admired the antiquity and devotion of Ethiopian Christianity, but was unsettled by its theological departures and its possession of those forbidden books. Efforts to bring the Ethiopian Church fully under Roman authority met with limited success, as Ethiopian clergy and laity alike resisted attempts to alter their cherished traditions. This tension reached a peak during the 16th century, a time of great upheaval in both Europe and Africa. The Catholic Church, facing the twin challenges of the Protestant Reformation and the rise of new scientific ideas, doubled down on its efforts to enforce doctrinal conformity. The Index Librorum Prohibitorum became a powerful tool in this campaign, listing not only the works of Protestant reformers and Enlightenment philosophers, but also ancient texts like those held sacred in Ethiopia. The message was clear. There could be no room for alternative canons or rival interpretations. In this climate, the Ethiopian Church's continued veneration of the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and other texts was seen as a quiet act of resistance. By maintaining these books as scripture, Ethiopian Christians declared their independence from Rome's theological decrees. They insisted that the richness of Christian revelation could not be confined to a single canon, nor could it be policed by external authorities. Their faith, grounded in centuries of tradition and illuminated by the wisdom of their own sacred writings, stood as a living witness to the diversity and depth of the Christian heritage. The Vatican's apprehension was not entirely unfounded. The forbidden books held in Ethiopian monasteries offered alternative visions of the cosmos, of the nature of angels and demons, of the unfolding of history and salvation. They provided theological resources for understanding the mysteries of evil, the workings of divine providence, and the ultimate destiny of humanity. In some cases, their teachings contradicted or complicated the doctrines established by Western councils. For believers seeking a deeper or more mystical understanding of the faith, these texts were a wellspring of inspiration and challenge. Moreover, the Ethiopian Church's reverence for these books was not merely academic. It was woven into the fabric of daily worship and spiritual life. The liturgy of the Ethiopian Church is rich with references to the stories and teachings found in the Book of Enoch and similar works. Hymns and prayers echo their themes, and sermons draw upon their wisdom. In monasteries and churches, these books are read aloud alongside the more familiar Gospels and epistles, forming an integral part of the spiritual diet of the faithful. This living tradition, centered in places like St. Stephen of the Abyssinians, served as a constant reminder to the Vatican that the boundaries of Christian orthodoxy were not as fixed or as universal as it might have wished. Here, within the very heart of Catholic Christendom, stood a church that embodied a different vision, a vision that was ancient, independent, and unafraid to challenge the authority of Rome. In the modern era, the relationship between the Vatican and the Ethiopian Church has evolved. Ecumenical dialogues and a growing appreciation for the diversity of Christian traditions have softened some of the old tensions. The forbidden books are now studied by scholars around the world, recognized for their historical and theological significance. Yet the legacy of this complex relationship remains, a testament to the enduring power of sacred texts and the ways in which they can both unite and divide. The story of Ethiopia's first church and its forbidden books is ultimately a story about the nature of authority in matters of faith. It asks whether the boundaries of belief are to be set by councils and decrees, or whether they can embrace the rich diversity of traditions that have flourished across time and space. It challenges us to consider the value of voices that have been marginalized or suppressed, and to recognize the wisdom that may be found in the pages of books once banned. As we reflect on the Vatican's unease, it becomes clear that the real issue was not simply the content of the Ethiopian canon, but what it represented. A living reminder that the Christian story is broader, deeper, and more mysterious than any one tradition or authority can contain. The Ethiopian Church, in preserving and venerating its forbidden books, stands as a beacon of that mystery, inviting all who seek to encounter the divine to look beyond the familiar and to explore the hidden treasures of faith. The preservation of these texts was not only a spiritual act, but also a cultural and intellectual one. Ethiopian scribes and theologians devoted centuries to the careful copying, translation, and interpretation of their sacred books. Manuscripts were adorned with intricate illuminations, their pages alive with color and symbolism. The stories and teachings contained within were passed down from generation to generation, woven into the oral and written traditions of the people. This legacy endures today, not only in the churches and monasteries of Ethiopia, but also in the hearts and minds of Ethiopian Christians around the world. The Book of Enoch and its companions continue to inspire artists, writers, and thinkers, offering fresh perspectives on the mysteries of creation, the nature of evil, and the hope of redemption. Their influence can be seen in music, poetry, and even in the popular imagination, where angels and fallen spirits take on new life in stories and legends. For the Vatican, the fear of Ethiopia's first church was, in many ways, a fear of the unknown, a recognition that the boundaries of Christian truth were not as clear-cut as it might have hoped. The forbidden books represented a challenge to the neat categories and hierarchies that the church had worked so hard to establish. They invited believers to question, to imagine, and to seek out new understandings of the divine. But perhaps the greatest lesson to be learned from this story is one of humility. The history of the Ethiopian Church and its forbidden books reminds us that no single institution or tradition has a monopoly on truth. The Christian faith, in all its complexity and diversity, is a tapestry woven from many threads, a tapestry that is richer for its variety and depth. Today, as scholars and seekers alike turn once more to the ancient texts preserved by the Ethiopian Church, the wisdom of these writings is being rediscovered and reappreciated. The Book of Enoch, once banned and forgotten in the West, is now recognized as a vital link in the history of biblical thought, influencing the development of Christian, Jewish, and even Islamic traditions. Its visions of angels and the cosmos continue to captivate the imagination, offering new ways of understanding our place in the universe. The story of Saint Stephen of the Abyssinians standing quietly within the walls of the Vatican is a powerful symbol of the enduring dialogue between faiths and traditions. It reminds us that the quest for truth is never ending, and that the treasures of wisdom may be found in the most unexpected places. As we look to the future, the example of the Ethiopian Church invites us to embrace the richness of our shared spiritual heritage, to listen to the voices of the past, and to remain open to the mysteries that still await discovery. In the end, the Vatican's fear of Ethiopia's forbidden books was not merely a fear of heresy or doctrinal error. It was a recognition that the Christian story is, and always has been, more vast and more wondrous than any one tradition can claim. The Ethiopian Church, with its ancient texts and enduring faith, stands as a living witness to that truth, a reminder that, in the words of the Book of Enoch itself, the mysteries of God are great and wonderful, and His glory is beyond measure. Through centuries of challenge and change, the Ethiopian Church has held fast to its unique vision, offering the world a glimpse of Christianity's hidden depths. Its forbidden books, once feared and suppressed, now shine forth as beacons of wisdom, inviting all who seek to explore the mysteries of faith to journey beyond the familiar and to discover the boundless riches of the divine. In this ongoing story, the legacy of Ethiopia's first church endures, a testament to the power of faith, the resilience of tradition, and the unending quest for truth. If this story stirred something in you, share it with someone who's also wandering. Subscribe so you don't miss the next ritual. And if there's a legend, a memory, a haunting you carry, tell us in the comments. Who knows? Maybe your story will be the next one we summon from the dark.